attention, please. We're going to let you know the regular meeting will need to begin at 6 o'clock for a public hearing. And then, as you know, there'll be another special meeting immediately following the regular meeting. So I'm going to call this meeting to order Monday, February 10th. And there's no roll call today except look around. And Sherry is not here at the present time, but she's going to call in during the work session and hopes to be here by the regular meeting. So now is the time for citizens who would like to address the City Council on any non-agenda item. Are there any cards? All right, thank you. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak? No? Okay. So let's go to the first on the business agenda. This is the one item I was talking about. This is a special meeting agenda. Council will receive information on staff recommended changes to the infrastructure improvement plan. This is a continuation of a discussion from January 27th, 2014 special meeting. Finance Director Larry Lang to present.
Thank you, Mayor. And just as a reminder for everyone, a couple weeks ago when we went through this, there were some questions that were left. You wanted time to think about a couple of things and us to come back with you this evening to review that, and that is the purpose on this. You'll notice the meeting is scheduled to be an hour and a half long. The presentation itself will be much shorter than that, but with conversation allowed. When we are done with this part, there are a number of nuances within the law, and so there will be an executive session. We're allowing at least half an hour at the end of this to go into executive session for you to be able to receive that input and still be available at 6 o'clock. But as we're going through, please feel free to stop me any place along the way because I want to make sure we get everything, every issue that you want to discuss out and discuss this evening. Tonight, as we indicated, is a special meeting just to follow up on some of the issues that have arisen since the report has been made public. We're not going to go through all of the information that we went through at the last meeting or all of the information we've received from the various public and developer meetings that we've had. But if there's questions on any of those comments, any place along the way, feel free to ask me about them so that I can address them for you this evening. 2 weeks from now, February 24th, we're going to ask the City Council to adopt the land use assumptions and the IIP. Also that night, we're going to ask you to adopt a policy related to development fee credits and the sales tax policy on that evening. We're also going to be setting a public hearing for the hearing on the fees. And that's a reminder as we go through this, while we show you fees, these are the calculations as of now. The statutes really require the fee calculation to come after the part we're in now, and the numbers that we've shown you so far and tonight are intended mainly to be guidance to you as you're looking at the IIP and the land use assumptions. Do I expect material changes from these fees? Absolutely not. If there were any that we expected, we would let you know, and if there are any small changes as we go forward in this, we will let you know of that as we move forward. So tonight we're going to go through the items that I recall or that I have down as far as pending. We're going to talk a little bit more about changes in the water and the wastewater IIP. We were asked about that and the fee calculations. Why did things change? What was the basis of it? So we're going to give you a brief update on that. We're also going to review the calculations. As you'll recall, the calculations that we had at the last meeting were done by staff as preliminary estimates, and we got the final calculations from the consultant. So I'll update you on what those numbers are. And we're going to talk tonight about the sales tax and development agreement credit policy that we started talking about 2 weeks ago. So what were the changes in the water and the wastewater? There were basically 3 changes that impacted the fees within mainly the central area and the south area. None of it north of the river, or very little. We don't provide much, north of I-10 in the north area. those areas that are north of I-10 would be impacted in the same way that the central is. First, we removed the CAP water rights. A certain portion of those were included in there for us to try to expand our water rights through the
Can I interrupt right there,
Yes.
Larry? At the same time, Buckeye requested CAP water. Did they get CAP water?
My understanding is they did because they didn't have it, but, and this is what Mark Holmes told me today, if Mark's here and he needs to expand on it, that's great, but
I would like him to expand on it a little bit.
what he
because-
told me today, though.
He's here.
He's here.
Yeah.
Don't mind, just
then-
because
then
it
it'll be
it sort of bothers me. You know, Mayor Meck and I have been working on this thinking, oh, you know, really touting CAP, and then we get turned down and they get it, so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Yeah, there was 2 other communities who did not receive NIA CAP in the reallocation. That was Peoria and Surprise. The Department of Water Resources evaluated all the applications based on a policy application process they put together. After review of our application, along with the others, they determined that we would not have, it was based on whether we would have unmet demands by the year 2020. So according to the Department of Water Resources, we would not have unmet demands before the year 2020, and that was part of their criteria they used. I will tell you that the other applicants, there was a total of, I think it was 130,000 acre feet. That was the total volume of, around there, total volume of applications for the NIA water, of which the department was looking to try and reallocate about 51,000 acre feet. So there was a lot more water in applications than there was water. So I know that not every applicant received any quantity near what they may have ordered. A lot of them were reduced, again, looking at their application process, the applications and the figures that were put in their applications.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that explains a little bit.
No, that's great,
I know
thank you. I just wanted the public to hear that.
It is a
Right.
disappointment,
Yeah.
and we're definitely still following up with how our application was reviewed by the Department of Water Resources. So that dialogue still is continuing.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
There was also an increase in the calculation of gallons that were used against the infrastructure, and that was to put it on the basis of average day gallons as opposed to maximum day, because that's closer to how you design and operate the systems. Finally, the cost recovery for the Northern Solution and the Rainbow Valley Water Campus were included in the report, but they weren't included in the math when it added up to the fee. So in this final calculation, they also got included in the math to make sure they got included and that the money would be there for that to be collected. So those were the basis for the change in the water and wastewater from previous versions that the City Council had seen. And so as a result of the calculations by fee category, I'm showing you a revised schedule now that shows North and Central Parks and Recreation fee, for example. The current fee is $939. The original report that you saw, North and Central, was $2,426. The revised report, after the recommended changes that the council I think there was consensus on, after those changes and the recalculation that took place, the revised report is $922 per residential family or dwelling unit, and so that change was a decrease of $1,504. I'm not going to go through all of these, but that's what this schedule is showing, detail for each of the changes that we recommended in there by area and so forth.
Question real quick, Larry.
Yes, sir.
I know everybody's going about this all at the same time, but do we have any idea, at least on the west side of town, are we, I guess, are our numbers comparable to the others? Are we still competitive?
We did do that comparison. I think we did an analysis when all of these had to be posted, and that's really all the information we have because they haven't started voting yet. That's when city councils make the decision. At the time we looked at it, our fee in total at that time, and I'm going to use the total fee in the original report there in the central area, $16,667. At that time, our fee was, amongst the communities that we looked at, as I recall, we were towards the high end, but not the highest. The two highest, one of them I know was in Gilbert, or I believe was in Gilbert, and the other was, I'm not completely sure where that was. What we don't know is what, from the revised report column, what people will revise their reports and where they will be. For the indications that we're seeing is that we will be in the range from some of our surrounding communities, and, you know, maybe slightly above or higher than average for those amounts, but not, you know, they aren't going to be $7,000, that type of thing.
Yeah, I know it's a little early because.
Yeah, because, I mean, even here, you haven't voted on anything, so your vote won't take place for 2 weeks. So other cities wanting to look at us won't be able to do that until you vote on it in 2 weeks. Okay? So at the bottom half of this, and I realized in some conversations with other staff people that the way we worded this wasn't necessarily clear, so we tried to expand on it. The fee at the bottom that we're including, the bottom chart, is total residential, including water and wastewater. And we assumed a 3/4 inch water meter, which is the common size water meter for residential housing. And in the north zone, I did not show the calculation for any of those areas that have sewer north of I-10, but the current fee, or the original report, including water, was $6,200, and after all the changes that we've made, that dropped down to about $3,100 for a change downward of about $3,000. The central area, you can see that dropped down by about $2,300, and in the south, that actually increased by about $3,700. Two major components of that: the average day use that we talked about, or there are several major components, but the average day use as compared to the maximum had more of an impact on the south area, but also those two cost recovery items that we talked about in the previous screen had more of an impact. In the past 2 weeks, I did meet with representatives from Newland, who are the most impacted by this. They reviewed it quite closely. We went through it. They want to take it back and touch it themselves and that type of thing. And so they did that, and they emailed me back that they are in concurrence with these fees. So that has taken place. It hadn't taken place when we were here 2 weeks ago. Another piece of information we didn't have for you 2 weeks ago that we thought was very pertinent for you to see is what are the impacts on commercial. On these fees, all fee categories are assessed differently. Residential, commercial, industrial, office, they each have different fee categories. I don't have charts on all of those, but the commercial is one we've talked a lot about, and so I wanted to show you what those changes were. In the north zone, the current fees total are per 1,000 square feet, and I'm just doing the total here. You can see they're about $1,930. The original report was that they would be $4,146. A lot of this change is due to the changes that we did in the streets, that we reduced the street infrastructure plan considerably in this process. And that reduced it down to $2,218 per 1,000 square feet. So the total that we reduced it was about $1,928. When we talked to Macerich, the first feedback that we received from them when this report came out in December was that, or in December we received the feedback. The report was dated October, excuse me. The feedback they had is that the jump in those fees by that much seemed quite drastic to them. And of course they were doing it per square foot. We have talked to them subsequently. I have not talked to them since I sent them this schedule, but we did talk to them actually 2 weeks ago before our meeting, and their concerns were, and I think I indicated that previously, they don't agree with the allocation to Parks and Rec, which we believe is statutory, and also that they thought that some of their other areas besides the mall itself, but some of the others should get credit for the street impact fee, and the mall is the part that got specifically excluded in there. What I had told Rob, and I'm sure not going to imply that there was any consensus on that, but it's a very good conversation, don't misunderstand me, is that collectively through there that the total fees, because of the area on the streets that we set aside in the mall, their total fees are probably actually lower than they were under the existing fee structure. I say probably, I didn't run the calculation, but that was my discussion with Macerich when I met with them. In the central zone,
Makes one wonder if
please.
they had their representation, their lobbyist at the legislature when all this was being done? Just curious.
I'm not
On
sure.
the whole, that the developers weren't as favor of this plan as the home builders themselves were. So I just wonder if they were at the table.
I can't answer who was at the
Just a
table,
question. I didn't think you could. But
Mayor Lord.
Mayor,
Yeah.
quick question.
yes, Joe.
As part of the development agreement, there was a lot of improvements made. Was it
Yes.
40, 50, some odd $1 million?
Yes.
As a result of that development agreement, they're actually paying a tax on all those improvements. Correct? I mean, we taxed all those
Property
improvements.
tax, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the property tax,
Property
the
ta-
assessment.
Oh, the assessment. Okay, yes, sir.
I'm trying to get my hands around it. Since the improvements were made and they're paying it through the property tax itself, how would you even put those roads into?
That's the problem.
And again, I'm just thinking out loud here, but
Yep.
it seems to me that would be a problem because that's already covered in the improvement district.
Yeah. That's absolutely the problem nailed, is that infrastructure has been in place for several years now, 5, 6 years now. And so we can't put that in the improvement plan, in the IIP, because it already exists. But you're also getting into the same concept of equity, that this is infrastructure that has been put in by the developer. Had the economy not dropped off, of course, they would have gotten the impact fee credits right at that time, at the time they did their development for the infrastructure that was added in connection with the development. And in fact, that also on the part of the parks, and because of what you said, it reminded me of the second half that they pointed out to me, is they built a park. And they believe they should receive credit for that park, even though it wasn't in this IIP. That's an issue that will be an administrative issue with with the work with legal counsel. We will address that issue as appropriate when they apply. I did have one response, and that's if they have their permits out by August 1st of 2014.
Great close. Great close, Larry. I like that. I'm listening
That would
tonight.
help.
That's a great
Because
close.
then they come under the current report, not
That's another
not
carrot
this
out
one.
there to do that.
Yeah.
But here's the problem I have even with the credits, and maybe that's a legal issue, maybe for the attorney, is they are getting paid back as a result of the development agreement, assuming they make their timelines. So isn't that like a double payback?
No,
or double credit?
because first of all, the structure of the agreements, the development reimbursement agreements, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
But the structure of the agreements, the timing that they're all doing, they may or may not get reimbursed for all of the infrastructure over that period of time.
Had they done it earlier, had we been in there earlier,
Had
would
they
be faced
opened
with
it
this.
earlier, their likelihood of having received all of that infrastructure over a period of time. But you also have another statutory provision in the impact fee statutes that basically says you can't charge a developer for infrastructure they put in. So that's where where all of the issues get complex. That's why we have a city attorney. He works it through. We have no problems because it's easy for him.
No, and I can appreciate.
Anytime, Mark. Anytime. Thank you, Mark.
No, and I can appreciate the complications because you do have money coming back as a result of repayment for putting that infrastructure. Again, assuming they make their deadlines, but and I assume all that stuff's going to get worked through, so we don't overpay or we fall within, quote, those guidelines within the development agreement
Yes.
and the impact fees.
And it's just some of the details that we do have to work out as we administer it.
Well, I can understand their concern with that.
Yep.
That's kind of like leaving them out on a limb.
I
So,
agree.
I mean, with my smart remark before that, I do understand that it's not fair also to them. Joanne?
Oh, I think I have my question answered. I'm with them on the Parks and Recreation piece, but if you believe it's statutory, then I guess there's not much that we can say about that. But as I look at this chart, and Joe's hit upon some of the complications of the development agreements, I just want to make sure that I'm reading this chart correctly, that when we say current, if somebody came in today and did something, that's the current fees that they would be paying, correct?
That would be correct.
Correct. Original report is the study, Tischler, whatever.
It is this draft of the
Okay.
report dated October of 2013.
Thank you. And so the revised report is once your team looked at it all and discussed.
Interpretation, huh?
Yes,
And the
this
most-
is what it
yep.
should. So, okay, I was right. I just wanted to make sure that I'm.
The
on
most
board
recent draft of the revised report is actually February 6th. So it's pretty well, it's still warm if you touch it because it's hot off the press, yes.
I think we're set.
Sorry.
You hit a funny bone there, I guess, huh?
Let 'em go.
So we thought, with all of this that we've gone through this is, I think, our third meeting, our third work session on all of this. You had a public hearing on it. With all that we've gone through, where is it that we are today compared to existing fees? So we put up single-family residential up in this chart. Again, that's a 3/4-inch water meter. This includes water and sewer fees. For the areas north of I-10, we're assuming that they're on the Liberty or the other private companies and not on our system for this presentation. You can see north of I-10, single-family residential actually is dropping by $2. Central, and it's primarily from the water and sewer areas, is increasing by about $2,200, and the south area is increasing by about $900.
Mayor.
I'm going to interrupt for a moment. Sherry's ready to go online, so. They're calling her right now. Can we take just a small pause here? Thank you.
And I'll have a question when she comes up.
Good.
Hello, Councilmember Loretano.
This is Sherry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to just, if you want to just say hello right now, they'll know you're on.
Hello?
But again, it's like comparing postponed to, doesn't mean that that's there would be some, it'd be built up, there'll be flyers.
Sherry, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right, welcome. Just let us know when you want to say something, Sherry, you have any questions. All right, go ahead, Larry.
Okay.
Okay.
Larry, I do have a question.
Bill has a question.
You know, I know that clearly we don't provide water service north of I-10, but we do in some sections provide the sewer service.
Yes.
How is that reflected in all of these fees? Because we're only getting half of that now.
The areas that are north of I-10 that the sewer is included, those have been calculated in the fees, and in the report they actually show it separate. I like to keep it, because it's a relatively small portion of it, I just like to keep it simple in the areas that people will look at to reduce confusion.
Great, thanks. Can you, when this is all done, can you at least let me know what page that's on or
Sure.
where that sits?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay. And for Sherry's benefit, we've gone through some of the fee calculations where they've been in the past, and we can go over that if there's questions on it. But your timing is perfect to get into the issue that we left the discussion at the most, I think, 2 weeks ago. And so I'm going to start by going back through the construction sales tax. I went through this fairly slowly when we did this the first time, and if you will bear with me, I'm going to do it again fairly slowly just to make sure we're all understanding where we're trying to go with this. The statutes require that the excess portion of the construction sales tax has to be treated as a contribution to development fees. The city sales tax rate is 3.5% for construction, whereas it's 2.5% for the bulk of our other retail sales. Therefore, the differential that the statute...
Excuse me, Larry, that's probably a better way to put in parentheses under that general sales tax for people that are looking at this, businesses for...
Prevalent sales tax
Yeah,
or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that they understand the difference between them.
Okay.
Thank you.
This differential is 1%, and if you'll notice, that's 1 out of 3.5. So it's not 1% of our construction sales tax. It's the ratio of 1 to 3.5, and that has created calculation issues as we've gone through with people, because 1% sounds like a small number. But that difference must be...
You heard Joanne coughing on that.
Yeah, she knew it wasn't a small number. So the differential must be applied to growth projects, and that's under the statutes. So the current construction sales tax projected revenue for fiscal year 14-15, what we're planning on including in next year's budget, is $6 million. The difference, the 1% on that, is about $1.7 million. So that's the construction sales tax side of the equation. Okay?
Yep.
The statutes also require that we provide credits to people who provide infrastructure, and that has happened over the years. And they get waivers, credits. They've got all kinds of terminology for it that are out there. And these are credits for people. If someone put in infrastructure, as we talked about earlier, when we were talking on the commercial side, they put in infrastructure, and under the statutes, we're required to give them impact fee credits because they paid for the infrastructure. You shouldn't have to pay twice. And so those credits exist out there, and they're in a number of different forms. And based on the fee calculations that were in the draft report, which is the October report that Tischler-Bice did, based on those fee calculations, we estimated the value of those outstanding credits at about $3 million per year. Of that, $1,750,000 was general government, and about $1.3 million was from the utilities. But those fee calculations have been revised, and we've gone over those estimates earlier this evening. And based on the current fee calculations, our estimate of those credits is $2.1 million total. $800,000 of which will come from general government, 1.3 million will be for utilities. Remember, all of this is for infrastructure that has been put in, and likewise, the impact fees that we're collecting are for infrastructure, not for operations. So the question that we had in the discussion the last time is kind of a question of our enterprise funds are to be self-sufficient, and can we follow what we're looking at? I guess I skipped a beat myself, and I need to keep on here, and then let me come back to that if I could. The Goodyear City Council can make a legislative policy decision to offset the construction sales tax rate differential against the outstanding development fee credits. So that's where the question came up. Yes, how will that impact our policy that the enterprise fund should be self-sustaining? And as we've gone through this and as I've worked with the model, what happens here is that I kind of have to step back at times, and what we're talking about is how we finance the infrastructure that goes into the utilities. One model is you could finance it completely by the developers paying all of it, okay? We would still be using that for our rates, and what we're talking about is how we finance the infrastructure, not how we operate the utilities. So all of this is the source of funding for that infrastructure that we require from growth, and that is also a key part of our policy. So implementing a policy that would offset the construction sales tax against the outstanding development fee revenue credits, including those in the utilities, in my opinion, we still are self-sufficient in our utilities because it's the operations of our utilities that are not to be tax supported, and they will not be tax supported. But to clarify that just a little bit, we've come up with a few principles here. One is that we are going to create a restricted impact fee fund to hold the excess construction sales tax. So what's going to happen is when we get the data that says here's how much the construction sales tax, that is going into a fund by itself, and that fund is similar to all of our other impact fee funds. Then when we get credits to reduce those fees, okay, we'll get credits from various developers, or they have what are called certs out there, which are certificates that give them reductions or no impact fees in certain categories. We will apply that fund to the impact fee categories at that time that those credits come in. If there are not enough sales tax credits to pay for all of the fees, the non-utility infrastructure gets the first credit, not the utility. So it'll come first to the non-utility, then it would go to the utility, only if there's enough from the non-utility. If there's still a difference that hasn't been paid for by these, that would have to be paid through utility rates then. Okay? I know when I start doing that.
Yeah, he's been.
Believe it or not, I follow it. But the question I have, and again, for the record, is by doing this, the question I had earlier on is that we still maintain that policy that we have, that those that are not in our utility area are not subsidizing the city's utilities.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the statutes have defined the construction sales tax, the excess construction sales tax, to belong to the infrastructure by statute.
Right.
And so as a result of that, that does not impact, and we will continue, we will be able to continue to keep our enterprise fund self-sustaining following this policy.
And again, that's what I was after in that earlier discussion. We spent all those years getting to that point. I wanted to make sure that we don't take a step back. So I appreciate your effort in coming up with this.
Okay. questions on it, because I know it can be complex as we go through there, especially when I start out throwing out the term like creating new funds. And no, I don't do that on purpose to confuse people. Any questions at all on that?
Well, the only general comment is I appreciate setting up that special fund because it's easier to track. So if there's ever an audit on the impact fees, you can go right back to that sales tax, that 1% in that fund. So it makes it a little easier than trying to track that down if it's not in that fund. So
Actually, from an administrative point of view, I would say that that fund is critical to compliance with the statute. It's the one way we'll be able to show that we are doing what was intended in the statute.
Well, and I would imagine that the audit committee would look at that in a couple of years and say, hey, let's check this out. So this is perfect in that
Well, the other
regard.
thing that's going to happen is we have to build this into annual reports that we're required also by statute to provide on our impact fees. What did we collect? How did we spend the money? And I will assure you that the Home Builders Association that proposed the legislation that's in place now gets copies of that every year. And so they will see it. We're sure not going to put this hidden. This is going to be out there for everyone to see.
Good.
Okay. So the policy statement, and again, I won't read this here. We did change this a bit from what we had a couple of weeks ago, only to better fit the specifics that we've outlined. As we thought through it a little more, how do we make this work? How do we make it work and keep in compliance with the statutes and that type of thing? Most of what we have here is for the mechanics of it. We are going to bring this policy statement back as part of the, either as a separate resolution or as part of the resolution adopting the IIP and impact fee and land use assumptions. But we're going to ask you to adopt this policy statement on the 24th. I think,
Yes, Wally?
So, Larry, when you do your year-end accounting of this, will we be provided with a copy or a work session so that we know how the impact fees are being spent as well and collected and distributed, whatever it is?
we would be happy to provide you with a copy of the report that we do, and if the council would like a work session on it, absolutely, we'd
I'd
be
just
happy
like to see
go
how
through.
it's going to work.
Absolutely.
I'm very
Yep.
curious to see if, in fact, it's going to cause more damage than it is to help us.
Okay,
So,
absolutely. So we kind of referred to it. Where do we go from here? February 24th, we're going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to publish the notice for the next public hearing, which will be on March 31st. Two, we're going to ask you to adopt the IIP and land use assumptions, and as part of that also adopting the policy statement that we just discussed. Then on May 12th, City Council will be asked to adopt the fees. And this says July 26th. That's the earliest it can be effective, but actually August 1st, I think, is the date that will make them effective. That's the date that the statute requires us to have it in, and I don't see a reason to do it 5 days earlier. Any other questions or things that we've missed from the number of discussions you've been involved in?
Well, there may be, but I think we'll call an exec meeting and,
Okay.
all right, I think that, because there's always those questions that are a little more comfortable that you can ask behind. So what I'm going to ask for, upon roll call, we'll convene into an executive session as the posted for the following. I'd like a motion and a second to go in executive session to meet for consultation with a city attorney to receive legal advice regarding the adoption of impact fees, since we have not heard from him during this time, and the infrastructure improvement plan or the land use assumption pursuant to ARS 38431.03. Could I have a motion, please, and a second?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Stiff and a second by Councilman Osborne. Roll call vote, please.
aye.
Aye.
Councilman Loretano?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear her call. Aye.
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 Aye. So we'll now convene to a special meeting. Now, what happens? Does this go in does Councilman Loretano also? No, she will not.
The mayor, no. You have to be actually physically present to participate. in the
Okay,
session.
so you won't be in on this, Sherry, so, okay? So let's adjourn to it. Meeting will start at 6 o'clock. Meeting adjourned.
All right. It's good to get this time together.
Yeah.
We do.